I'm going to do you another little tune here that yeah, keep a fella on his toes. I'll do you another little tune here. I had a great privilege a few years ago. A friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey Riley, I'm out here in L.A. and I'm with Anthony Minghella and T-Bone Burnett. And I told him how cool it would be to have some banjos in this film about North Carolina that were made in North Carolina." And that was my friend Dirk Powell, and he was working on the Cold Mountain film. And he said, "Can you send them a banjo to look at? Because they're interested in having you build the banjos." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So I sent them a banjo to look at, and they said yes. So I made the banjos in the film Cold Mountain. But then they said, "Hey, you know, we need somebody to be a ballad singer. We need somebody to be Pangle's voice in that film." I said, "Well, I can send them a recording." So I sent Anthony Minghella and T-Bone Burnett recordings of my voice, singing ballads. And they called up and said, "Yeah, you're the one we want. Can you be in the studio in Nashville such and such days?" "Yes, sir, I can." "Better not get in my way." "Come on, I'm coming." Well, it was a huge privilege for me to have the opportunity to be one of the only North Carolinians involved in making the film Cold Mountain. And as I think back on it, it was a huge privilege to be one of the only Americans involved in making that film too, set during the American Civil War in North Carolina. Well, you had Anthony Minghella, who was the director. Now, he was from the Isle of Wight in England. And then you had Jude Law, he was from England, and Nicole Kidman, she was from Australia. And then the fella what played the fiddle, his name was Brendan Gleeson, and he's from Dublin, Ireland. He was Stavrod Thews. He was Ruby Thews' daddy. Now, but then you had the Union and Confederate soldiers. They were actually the Romanian army. See, there wasn't a war going on, so they were available. And they dressed them up and put them out there on the field. And if they looked disgruntled, it's because they were. Because it was about 100 degrees and they were dressed up in wool uniforms running around on the field in the middle of Romania. But I got to go into the studio and work with Anthony Minghella. Huge privilege. Anthony was a great film director. And the reason he was such a great film director partially is because he knew how to talk to people. He could get the best work that you had in you out just by saying nice things to you. Well, me and old Dirk Powell, we'd walk into the studio there every morning, and there Anthony would be, big smile on his face, and he looked up at me and he'd say things like, "Oh, Riley, you're perfect. Thank you so much for being part of our project." And after about 2 days of that, I started warming up to that little feller. He became my friend. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about him. He'd like to hear this. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but he had a good sense of humor. And we were getting ready there one morning to do this song that I'm about to do for you. It's called The Cuckoo Bird. And old Anthony, he looks up at me and he says, "Now, Riley, when you're singing, now, I have just a bit of direction for the cuckoo bird. When you're singing, 'Oh, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles when she flies.' And that bit right there, could you just say, 'Coo, coo'?" It was at that particular moment that I started trying to determine how I was going to tell Anthony Minghella, no. And that's something I'm still thinking about because we did it. And if you hear the soundtrack to the film Cold Mountain and you hear a cuckoo on there, that cuckoo's me. But I thought I'd play you the cuckoo a little bit. This is a great old tune that I've loved ever since I was a little kid. It's the kind of music we listen to around our house. She's a pretty bird, and she warbles when she flies. And she never says cuckoo till that birthday of July. Jack Diamonds, Jack Diamonds, Lord, I know you from old. You robbed my poor pockets, all my silver and my gold. My horses, they ain't hungry, and they won't eat your hay. So I'll ride on a little further, I will feed them on the way. Gonna build me a log cabin up on the mountain so high, so I can see my darling when she goes walking by. Oh, cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles when she flies. Cuckoo! But she never hollers cuckoo till that 4th day of July.